dotnet Interactive with Maria Naggaga.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffery Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffery Palermo, your humble host. Make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And lots of people are taking me up on that previous offer for a complimentary 30-point DevOps inspection of your environments, helping lots of people. And also, lots of user groups are running virtual events. I think I've spoken at a number of those already and have more on the calendar. So if that would help your group, then let me know. I'd be happy to support the event. And there's other speakers as well. So I'd be happy to connect you with that. And if you're a willing user group presenter and you've experienced doing that, push it out on social media. Get the word out. There's no reason that the user groups have to be on complete hiatus given the virtual technology. And if you're tuning in for the first time to the podcast, the Azure DevOps Podcast is for developers shipping software with Microsoft technologies. And my goal is that for all development teams to have the tools and equipping necessary to be able to move fast and deliver quality and run their software systems with confidence. Now today, joining me today is Maria Naggaga, and she is a senior program manager on the .NET team at Microsoft, building .NET Interactive, which delivers interactive experiences online and offline. Maria, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. How are you? I'm
well. And for the listeners getting to know you, you're at Microsoft. We're going to dig in deep into the technology, but what's your background been, and what's your career and led up to this position that you have working on that team at Microsoft?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking the question. So I've been at Microsoft for almost 8 years now. I joined in 2012, right out of college after finishing my computer science degree. So when I initially joined at Microsoft, I was a developer evangelist. And when they offered the job to me, I had no idea what it was, and I had to Google it. And I think I should probably say Bing it now, but I had to look it up and understand what the role was. And it was really about engaging developers where they are, right? And getting them excited about our platform. And that was really interesting to me because it was a challenge because I had written code in the past as an intern, and I just knew that it wasn't something I wanted to do full time, but I didn't know what other opportunities were there. After doing that for 3 years, .NET Core had just been open sourced and was cross-platform. And I had never even thought about using .NET at all. So I started doing a lot of tutorials. I started blogging about it. I started going to conferences about it. And I bumped into the .NET team at a conference. And a year after that, I joined DevDiv, where I worked on .NET under Scott Hanselman. So my team's a little bit interesting, where we're a medley of community people who focus on building products based on our customers' feedback. And my goal and why I was brought onto the team was figure out how we can get net new developers as well as our existing customers excited about our platform, but also allowing them to have an easy on-ramp. So do we have to download Visual Studio or any editor just to write console.writeline or to test a NuGet package? Can we provide those experiences in the browser? And that's when I got into the interactive developer experience. And out of that came Try.net. Maybe you've heard of Try.net. So if you've gone to docs.microsoft.com.
Well, let's tell the listeners what that is. There's tons of people that haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. So Try.net was born out of a research paper that I did for our corporate vice president, Julia Linson. And she's just figure out how we can make our online documentation exciting. And I said, if you look at any other language, so if you look at JavaScript or Python or even Java, you'll find these interactive experiences when someone lands on a piece of documentation where they can run and understand the syntax or how an API works right within the browser. We need something similar. So she said, go figure it out. And I worked with a dev team and we came up with trydotnet. And trydotnet was an embeddable interactive experience where you could run code in the browser. It gives you IntelliSense. It gives you all the richness of that experience. And all you have is a run button. And when we started putting this on the docs pages, we saw a huge customer satisfaction increase, up by 30%. So we're just like, this is something people are enjoying. So we began to expand that into other things that we will continue to talk about during the call. But that was the birth of .NET Interactive, was from this one tiny developer experience that we thought would only be used for education.
Nice. And .NET Interactive is very much the brand name or the name around all this. But what does it include, and what does it depend on?
Okay, absolutely. So .NET Interactive is a very tiny family. I like to, because anytime you mention like a family of tools at Microsoft, people freak out that we're just trying to give them more stuff when we've already given them so much and getting overwhelmed. But it's a tiny set of tools and APIs. And the first one is trydotnet.js. That's a pretty mouthy, it's a pretty long title. We'll probably need to change that. And that is our API. So it runs on Blazor. So what we're doing is all the code is being executed on the client side, right? Which is very cheap. It allows us to actually provide this to multiple people. That's one. And it's only internally used, but we hope to expand this to other people so anyone can use it on their blog posts. But it's used on docs.microsoft.com.
Hold on. That's really interesting. You just kind of blazed right past that. You're running this on Blazor client side, which is WebAssembly.
Yeah.
And so the client side Blazor, which hasn't gone GA yet, you guys have taken a dependency on it. So that kind of means that whole architecturally, that's a go, right? C# running in a browser.
Yep.
Right? That's that's really happening here.
It's really happening. If people want to try it out today, if you go to docs.microsoft.com and you look up quick starts and click on a Hello World C# application, there'll be the option to run your application in the browser. You click on run, open up your developer tools, and then look at networks and you'll see all the DLLs coming in, right? You'll actually see it all running. And I remember when we showed this at Build last year, people were like, how are they doing that? And we're just like, Blazor client side, and people's faces lit up. And I think the Blazor team got a bit of pressure from our experience of this is something that customers really want.
Yeah.
So we were happy that we were able to prove a concept for the Blazor team. And it is a go. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but I'm pretty sure at Build, you will see announcements on the plans for Blazor client side.
Yeah, well, we know that it's coming, but I think there's a lot of people are thinking, wait a minute, are they going to encounter some difficulties? Is this going to get canceled? I don't, because it's so exciting, it's groundbreaking. Yeah. And I think a lot of people want to build applications with the architectural assumption that you'll be able to actually run that C# code in the browser. And so everybody has a lot of anticipation, I think.
So I think the fact that we as an internal product is depending on it, I would like to say it's not going anywhere.
That's awesome.
And we were actually also one of Blazor's first customers.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, that means a lot. When other parts of Microsoft use a technology, then that means, okay, it's real. It's not just a skunkworks project. It's not this local. It's now getting around. So that's great. All right. I stopped you on that point because I was so excited, but please continue.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're excited because a lot of people, when they saw it, they said, oh, that will never last. And we're like, yeah, it's lasting. And just for a little bit of background, why we took a dependency on Blazor, WASM, is because before we were running on Azure container instances, right? Because everyone, running code in the browser is not the most secure thing, right? So we wanted to make sure every single time someone landed on one of these interactive experiences, that they would have a secure container waiting for them, right? So we used Azure Container Instances for that, and it was great. However, it was incredibly expensive, right? So being able to sell, and I use sell in quotes, right? Because we want to make sure this is as free as possible for people. That, hey, you can use Azure Container Instances, but it will cost you about $30,000 a month. That already didn't fit into what the story was for Try.net, which was allowing it to be accessible, like bringing accessible developer experiences to everyone. By putting this huge price tag on it, we were going to lose a whole bunch of people. So when we did talk to external customers, like we tried talking to CodePen and Replit and say, let's bring this C# experience over to you. They're like, 30,000? I don't know, right? But that's why we switched over to Blazor. It was honestly a lifesaver for us, for that experience, to be able to eventually dream of making this accessible for everybody.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
Hey, this is Jeffrey. Do you ever wonder if your software project is on the right path? It's really common for software projects to experience delays, to have the quality not where it needs to be, or have the team spending more time maintaining the software than you really should. In my practice, we know the challenges implementing all parts of DevOps, and it can make your head spin how many things you have to think about, and somewhere in your gut, you know that something's missing. So I've created a comprehensive 30-point DevOps inspection, reviewing your current process, methods, tools, source control, build integration, the various levels of testing, provisioning and maintaining environments, deploying, logging, telemetry, everything you need to think about in a high throughput, high productivity DevOps environment. And it really helps you gain peace of mind knowing that you're on the right track. And we are offering some more of our really popular 30-point DevOps inspections, and it's normally a $5,000 value, but I'm giving it away for free for my podcast listeners. Just send me an email, jeffrey@clear-measure.com. That's Jeffrey, and I'd be happy to inspect your existing DevOps environment, whether you use Azure DevOps Services, Octopus Deploy, TeamCity, any number of tools, because there are a lot out there. But what's important is that you have a complete and automated DevOps environment put together the right way. So get a second pair of eyes. Send me an email. All right, so you're going over Try.net. What .NET Interactive includes? Is Try.net the thing, or is that just one of the things?
One of the things was the original child, right? Okay. So it was the firstborn. And then the next thing that we worked on was a Try.net global tool, right? So this is when the words get really mumbled, but I will send you a link with this that will explain the family that is .NET Interactive. So the .NET Try global tool was born out of a conversation that I had with Damian Edwards, who works on ASP.NET. And he said, every single time you go to a workshop, getting people set up with the tools takes about half or more of that time.
It's hard.
So it's really hard. And people don't go away with that feeling of satisfaction that I've done something and I've learned something. It's like, I spent the past 3 hours installing Visual Studio and everything that's needed and all the packages. So his challenge to me was, how successful can we be with just the SDK? So if someone just had to download the .NET Core SDK, how successful could it be? So we thought about it as a team, and we're like, okay, every single workshop has two things: Markdown and a backing project, like a GitHub repo with Markdown and a backing project. So how successful can we be with just those two? So every single workshop has a backing project and has the Markdown with snippets in it that tell people what to do. So we said, how successful can we be with just those two? So we built a global tool, .NET Try, and what it did, it made your markdown files interactive. So we used C# regions that would point to the actual code snippet in your backing project. So in this scenario, someone would go to a workshop, they say clone the repo, download the .NET SDK, and install the .NET Try global tool. Now, after they've got the repo, all they'd have to do is go .NET Try in the command line, and it would load your browser. And it would be almost like if you're familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, it would have the markdown files where you have everything that the tutorial, the instructions, what you're learning, and the snippets would actually run against the backing project that you have within your GitHub repo. So that way it never goes out of sync.
So it's a executable document. The word
Exactly.
Jupyter Notebooks, for people not familiar, it's used in the business intelligence research space.
Yep.
To kind of embed analytics results and running in a expository format. But yeah, I imagine a online HTML document where some sections of it are the program.
Yes.
Things are running, right?
Yep. And that's exactly
cool.
What we did. And one of the things that we do want to add to that experience is the ability to actually publish your markdown file and make it into an actual website, kind of like GitHub Pages. That has been on the backlog for a while, but it's something we still plan to do. Maybe it's something we can open source and say, up for grabs, because I think that would be really beneficial, especially in the education space.
Okay.
And the newest child to the .NET Interactive tool is .NET Interactive Global Tool, which runs Jupyter experiences. So you can now use C#, F#, and PowerShell code right within Jupyter Notebooks. And that was born out of a necessity within our org to play well in the machine learning and data science space. And we built it. It shipped November of 2019. And it's also shipped within Azure Synapse. So I don't know if anyone's familiar. Are you familiar with Azure Synapse?
It's so new. I attended some sessions at Ignite, but I haven't put it into production myself. Why don't you give a quick overview of what it is?
So if anyone is familiar with Databricks, it is a Databricks experience with Azure. And I don't even know it in detail. I just provide the engine that allows them to run .NET code. Right? So I wish I had more details on that, which is really bad. They use our engine, but I don't know exactly what they use it for. But it's really around big data scenarios. So that's a big use case for us, and we're able to enable that. And what's great about that, it allows us to compete with platforms like Scala, right? So we can now allow for our .NET developers to stay using the languages that they love for big data and machine learning. So that's something we continue to work on. But notebooks are being used for a variety of things beyond just data science. People are using it heavily in academics. People are using it, surprisingly, for DevOps, deployment and automation. People are using it as troubleshoot guides. So a really good example of a troubleshoot guide is Azure Data Studios, and also SQL uses notebooks as well. They use notebooks to help their I'm looking for the right word, customer support, to troubleshoot anything that's happening on the Azure Live site. So I can reproduce what experiences that my customers are having on my own machine using notebooks, right? Without having to install anything. So we're seeing a lot of different use cases for notebooks beyond just data science.
Does this make it, or could it impact knowledge base articles? Like there's a support ticket. Hey, the application's having support, and somebody says, "Oh, what's this error? I'm not familiar with it," and they search the knowledge base so that they can fix the problem. Can this transform any type of documentation?
Yeah.
Or is it suited just for certain types?
I think I would need to look into it, but your scenario seems like a very good one for a notebook.
And So besides just being documentation and maybe running snippets of code, is this geared to actually incorporate a portion of UI where there would be a button where they press a button that's in a notebook and it actually does something, calls out to another system?
Oh yeah. So notebooks are pretty flexible. So you probably can take like the cell of the notebook, change the UI, and then have it manipulate something somewhere else. I've seen that done. I personally have not worked on it, but I do see people taking cells from notebooks and embedding it in other places. Actually, if you read anything with Azure Notebooks, which is a Microsoft offering, that's exactly what they're doing, right? Their goals moving forward is to create these embeddable notebook experiences across any systems that you have. So we take the power of the kernel, right? And what notebooks are able to do by like creating quick snippets out of context in different places everywhere, right? So I've seen people use notebooks in Word, which was pretty interesting. That was a demo I saw recently. Notebooks is a way to extend Excel. So beyond just macros. So what's the evolution of macros? People are looking at notebooks as that possibility. I'm seeing notebooks being used in people's CI/CD pipelines to quick check tests. I've seen people use notebooks for some of the most bizarre things, and bizarre is the wrong way. Exciting stuff. Yeah. And I can't wait to see how people are beginning to use these interactive cells more and more.
Okay. What popped back in my head was VBA, the embedded Microsoft Office runtime, where anywhere you could write a little snippet of VBA and it would run because you were in Microsoft Office. Yeah. So is this now where you'll be able to just put C# anywhere?
Yep, you could put C# and any language of your choice. And one thing I forgot to mention about .NET, the .NET kernel, which is a selling point for us. I might be lowercase bragging here, but the .NET Interactive kernel is polyglot by default. So we understand multiple languages from the get-go. So from the time we released, you can have one notebook, have one cell in C#, one cell in F#, one cell in PowerShell, one cell in JavaScript, one in HTML, and it's all running in a single notebook. And the reason why we did that was, if you talk to I think you probably talked to a couple of people at Microsoft, PMs and devs, customer investigation and customer study is key to the way we develop our tools. So we talked to customers at Citibank, we talked to customers at JP Morgan, people who are using notebooks. And they say their biggest blocker was you could only use Python, and then you had to think about what to do for different things. Like if you wanted to do something quick with scripting, like it's easier to do in PowerShell. Or if you wanted to do something that was better functional programming, it would be easier to do it with F#. So they said they would want to use the best language for the best job. And that was our motive. So everything that we did, we're just like, okay, if you want to use F#, you can do that. If you want to use PowerShell to pull in all your CSVs, you can do that. If you want to use JavaScript, your favorite JavaScript visualization library to plot your data, you can do that. And you don't have to transfer it between notebooks. It's happening in one single notebook. And that has been a game changer for us.
Yeah, that is exciting. Especially when I think early on with .NET Core, C# was first, and then the question was how many languages is it going to support, and of course, the Visual Basic sector was what do we have to change languages? So is it just for those listening? Is Visual Basic also included in that list?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So VB.NET is not one of them.
No.
Okay. We're always keeping track on what's supported and what's not.
But we've always said with everything that we do, if people from the VB community want to contribute back, we will do that. Like we will always accept their contribution. I think because we're just a team of two, we have to just stick with with the languages that people are asking for at the moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the latest child is the notebooks.
Yes.
Right? Is there a future baby in the plans?
There is a future baby in the plans that it's too early to talk about it, but the goal is creating these interactive components, like making sure that we create these interactive components that you can take and plug in anywhere, right? So we don't want you to have to take a dependency on Jupyter to just have this interactive experience, because right now our primary UI is Jupyter Notebooks, right? It's what works for us. But we also have our biggest feedback from our .NET customers and customers in general is Jupyter dependencies can be pretty heavy. Like you have to install Anaconda, then you have to install Python, then you have to install all these other things. But yet .NET Interactive at its heart isn't dependent to Jupyter Notebooks. So one of the things that you can expect in the future is being able to do this in VS Code.
Okay.
Right.
Which is TypeScript.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering, with VS Code and then the new Visual Studio Online, is this the same? Is that going to? Do you see those transforming from something that was written for a JavaScript runtime to maybe transforming to running on this runtime?
Oh, yes. Okay, so those, like, you're pretty much on the nose there. Those are ongoing conversations that we are having, especially, but the big question we have there is snippets versus full programs, right? So we have to be very clear on the scenarios that our tiny runtime is going to support and the scenarios that they're going to support in Visual Studio Online. So we're making those clear distinctions now. So one of the things that we would probably end up supporting is interactive experiences like in Teams, right? So like something like that, like the very lightweight experiences. The ones that you are describing, that would have to be a much longer conversation between the teams on what's best. But it is a completely ongoing conversation. Like one of the things that we've been having is for the VS Code native experience, would it make sense for the runtime to be .NET Interactive, right? Those are the kind of conversations that we're having. And we haven't made a decision yet, but the first demos that we're working on are working off .NET Interactive.
Okay, so for those who want to do something with this now, you mentioned GitHub pages where that's ready to. That's a scenario that doesn't have a lot of heavy dependencies. That's ready to go, where someone could use your technology and put in that into their Markdown at this point, or what scenarios are ready where people could go and do it now?
Okay, so for scenarios that people can go and do right now, the trydotnet.js our APIs are not refined enough for external consumption yet. That is something we hope to have by September. Okay. But for people who want to give it a try right now, the .NET Try Global tool, go have fun. There are a number of AWS evangelists who use it quite actively for workshops, as well as we've seen people use it at conferences to deliver C# content. And the .NET Notebooks experience is 100% ready to go. You'll see a couple of changes and new UIs and experiences added over the next few months. So by September, you'll have a richer breadth of experience that people can leverage right now. But right now we have what's good to go, the global tool, be happy and use it, and .NET Interactive for Jupyter Notebooks is good to go. And one thing I also want to add with .NET Interactive notebooks is that you can run them offline using our global tool. But if you want to share a notebook, you can with something called Binder. And what Binder does is that you add a Docker file to your repo. And what it will do, it will see if there is a notebook, load it up, and you can share that link with anyone in the world. So you have shareable notebooks too. And we have all of this documented on our GitHub repo, which is .NET/interactive.
That's a good tool to have, or good URL, .NET. Is it .NET.NET? or dot.nt?
No. Yeah. So it's part of the .NET repo. So it's dotnet/interactive. So it's GitHub.
On GitHub.
.NET,
Okay.
yeah, on GitHub. That's our GitHub repo.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Maria, so much for coming on the show and give us this overview. I learned a ton.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and stay safe up there in New York.
Stay safe, well, too, and thank you.
And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffery Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.